a shadow hanging over our ideals and our values. There is assault on our values and our principles. And now more than ever, we must choose to fight. We must choose to resist. We must choose to stand up for what we believe in.
Folks, that was a call to arms from New Jersey Senator Cory Booker yesterday as a number of Democrats took to the Supreme Court steps holding a news conference to blast the refugee ban of President Donald Trump. It has been a tumultuous 72 hours since that executive order was signed on Friday, leading to massive protests all across the country as many folks are condemning the president for his actions. Well, they also vowed to move forward fighting this not only in the courts but also in Congress. Several Democrats have actually put forth legislation that would repeal this particular ban. But remember, Democrats are in the minority in the House and the Senate. That's not expected to go far. But a new development took place on yesterday when Acting Attorney General Sally Yates announced that she ordered the Department of Justice not to defend this particular executive order. This is what she wrote. I am responsible for ensuring that the positions we take in court remain consistent with this institution's solemn obligation to always seek justice and stand for what is right. At present, I am not convinced that the defense of the executive order is consistent with these responsibilities, nor am I convinced that the executive order is lawful. For as long as I am the acting attorney general, the Department of Justice will not present arguments in defense of the executive order unless and until I become convinced that it is appropriate to do so. Folks, she didn't last long as acting attorney general. It was later that day when President Donald Trump fired Sally Yates as the acting attorney general. The White House issued a blistering response. Some called it extremely personal in their statement. This is what Press Secretary Sean Spicer wrote, quote, she betrayed the Department of Justice and was, quote, weak on borders and very weak on illegal immigration. Now, last night, and so you talk about just stunning there, New York Senator Chuck Schumer defended Yates before she was fired. He also widely criticized the Trump administration for the executive order and the way it was rushing through without consulting not only the various departments, such as the Department of Homeland Security, but also Congress.
What Sally Yates has done shows that her integrity, everyone knows she's a person of integrity, and this is a poor reflection on President Trump and his entire administration. They put this together in a slapdash way. It was almost if they wrote it on the back of an envelope. They didn't check its legality. Most people think it's illegal. They didn't talk to the agencies in charge, creating chaos. They didn't even clearly know exactly what they were doing. Some departments thought green card people were included. Some people thought green card people weren't. When you do something as important as this, it can't be a Twitter-type activity. This has to be thoroughly vetted, thoroughly gone over. All the agencies have to be consulted. And it's a very bad omen for this presidency.
Now, 16 attorney generals, states attorney generals, have gotten in on this, blasting this executive order, saying they are going to challenge this in court.
Its intent is to open the gates to Christian refugees and to slam the gates closed on those who follow the religion of Islam. This is un-American, it is wrong, and it will not stand. This is not a reality TV show, this is reality. And the real human suffering that has been caused by this train wreck does not allow me to agree with the president to say that this is just a nice, beautiful thing.
Folks, former President Barack Obama, he, of course, is in the British Virgin Islands, enjoying his vacation, and he has not held his tongue. Yesterday, he released this statement through spokesman Kevin Lewis. Quote, President Obama is heartened by the level of engagement taking place in communities around the country. Citizens exercising their constitutional right to assemble, organize, and have their voices heard by their elected officials is exactly what we expect to see when American values are at stake. With regard to comparisons to President Obama's foreign policy decisions, as we've heard before, the president fundamentally disagrees with the notion of discriminating against individuals because of their faith or religion. Joining us right now, folks, is Nihad Awad, the Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Also joining us on our panel, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, Leadership Strategist, author of How Exceptional Women, Black Women Lead. Tiffany D. Lofton, the Racial Justice Program Coordinator for the AFL-CIO. Donald Scoggins, President of Republicans for Black Empowerment. Folks, we told you anytime the Trump administration lies, we're going to play this. Nihad, massive lying taking place yesterday. Sean Spicer actually said, quoting the president, that only 109 people were impacted by this executive order, yet reporting shows 90,000 people across this country were impacted in various airports. People are still being impacted. In fact, before we went on the air, I read one particular story where one man was detained because on a Canadian flight, they were traveling through U.S. airspace. No one can make sense of this. Folks are actually shocked by this. Yet this administration continues to lie through its teeth, saying everything is being worked out just fine, when that is simply not the case.
Yeah, that's true. And good morning to you and to your guests and viewers. Unfortunately, yes, thousands of people have been affected. Those who were detained in U.S. airports without even knowing why they were detained. Families were broken. Thousands of people were sent back, and they don't know why is this happening. They are legal, they are legitimate, they were vetted. For example, doctors were coming back to their hospitals. I know a particular doctor from Cleveland, Ohio. She did not know why, and she was going back to her clinic. She was, on personal trip. I know I received phone calls from people here in Virginia, where I live. They said their family members were sent back on the same flight. They just detained them and sent them. Today, also, I just saw the story on CNN. A young boy was detained upon arrival, and his mother was waiting in Dallas Airport in Washington, D.C., not knowing what's happening and why a young boy was detained for no reason. So it has affected tens of thousands of people, but also it's affecting millions of people who are innocent. They have nothing to do with their governments. They have nothing to do with the politics of Donald Trump. And students who are coming back for their studies, IT workers, and even refugees who have been vetted extremely, because especially Syrian refugees, as we have known by now, they are subject to 2 years of scrutiny. National security agencies and law enforcement and diplomatic agencies, they go through their files, they interview them for 2 years. Once they come here, they're completely vetted, and clean to come. So why is the president now fulfilling his threats against American Muslims and against Muslims is to please a rising radical Christian right-wing group of people who voted for him, but he forgot that the United States people are, subject to him, and he has to be the president of all Americans, and America has been open for centuries for people as long as they are law-abiding citizens and they accept America and America embraces them.
Nihad, I want to play, this is Sean Spicer, White House press secretary, yesterday speaking from the podium.
Look, coming into this country is still a privilege. We're the greatest country on earth. And being able to come to America is a privilege, not a right. And it is our duty, and it is the president's goal to make sure that everybody who comes into this country, to the best of our ability, is here because they want to enjoy this country and come in peacefully. And so he takes that obligation extremely seriously.
Nihal, it was even more embarrassing listening to Sean Spicer yesterday literally assert that a 5-year-old kid who was detained somehow poses a terroristic threat.
Yeah, not only that, but the president and, throughout his campaign, he threatened to ban Muslims. So we filed a lawsuit yesterday against Donald Trump because we believe he is violating the U.S. Constitution. He is violating due process. He is violating equal protection for people by targeting a specific religious group. It's not only illegal, it is un-American. It's inhuman. So we cannot allow anybody to change the law, the tradition, the Constitution, just because they would like to please an extremist group here and to play in the hands of another extremist group over there.
Nihal Awad, Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. We appreciate you joining us on TV1. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.
Let's go to our panel here. Donald, I want to start with you. Look, this is beyond idiotic, what you're seeing when the White House just flat out lies. When they say only 109 people impacted, when it's 90,000 people. When you have individuals who help the United States as translators in Afghanistan, in Iraq, who also are having issues. And when you have the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, who wasn't even given a heads up on this before it was announced. This is pure amateur hour at the White House.
Well, I must say that I'm not a spokesman for the administration. If I had anything to do with it, I think that the proper thing to do would have been to consult all the professionals involved and get their buy-in first. I wouldn't have gone out and done so. I do think the order was a little rash, considering the administration has just come in and there are many other things that they need to get to deal with. So I cannot defend the president on this matter.
Ava, it's just that there's just a total disregard for how this has just unsettled the lives of so many people.
Absolutely. And what's really amazing to me is, as you point out, the administration continues to lie about this. You have thousands of people who were negatively impacted. People, by the way, who have already gone through extreme vetting. It is not easy to get a U.S. visa. Let's just put that on the table, number one. So they've already obtained that. Some of them even have green cards. And to still be given this litmus test before they come back into the country, being carted off with handcuffs as if they're criminals, even to children, is absolutely inexcusable. It is definitely a violation of our Constitution. He is a president. He is not a dictator, all right? So he needs to understand that either he conforms to the U.S. Constitution or he needs to be the next person that's unemployed.
Tiffany, what's also amazing here, we now know that some rogue members, some rogue staffers on Capitol Hill
on Twitter, yeah.
Work with the White House, sign non-disclosure agreements that they would not disclose their work. And they were working with the White House and will order it not to tell their Republican bosses. Let me tell you something right now. If I was a Republican member of Congress and I had a staffer who went behind my back and worked with the White House on this executive order, did not tell me anything, I would fire them today.
Immediately. Roland, and this is not a new trend. We saw President Donald Trump, we saw President Donald Trump also do this to the EPA and say that if you're going to release any data or any statistics about anything that has to do with energy, first you have to run it by me before you share it with the rest of the world. What's happening right now, for one, is not catching me by surprise. I knew that this was going to happen. I knew that Donald Trump was a threat to this country and that he was going to implement some policies that were unfair to our communities. But what is extremely, extremely exciting about what's happening right now is that organic ironically, Sunday night, we saw folks take to the airports, take over, shut down, stand in the streets so that they also showed their voices in person. What happened at the Women's March, what happened at the airports is happening right now, is going to continue to happen as long as, like former President Barack Obama said, our American values are at stake. And I hope that in some sort of fashion we can strategically figure out how do we target Donald Trump and all of his appointees and all of his administrators so that they can start to feel the pressure, because they are not going to respond to folks who did not vote for them. They don't care. Donald Trump cares about his money. And so what we need to figure out is strategically, when we take over the airports, when we stand in the streets, when we march at the Women's March, how do we continue to build on that power, organize and mobilize those people who are turning out to make sure that they put an impact to change these policies around. And today we have that opportunity for folks who have been calling their Congress members to vote against sessions that's coming up, but also with DeVos, and the list goes on. At 8 p.m. today, like you said earlier, we're going to find out our Supreme Court nominee that's popping up. We have the opportunity here to take action, and we need to take it seriously, because Donald Trump obviously is playing no games.
Roland, I just want to jump in right quick and say this, that I think the American people need to know that all Republicans do not support the way President Trump is handling his administration thus far. I think that's very important to know.
They need to stand up.
They do.
If they are American, they need to stand up and call out what exactly is un-American.
We'll find out by the votes today.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.